Welcome to the FNDN Series, your deep dive into startup compensation with industry leaders from across the startup world. Join me, Matt McFarlane, a people operations leader turned compensation specialist, as we uncover the strategies and practices driving success in tech startups around the world. Hear insights from heads of people, founders, and experts as we explore how to build robust compensation frameworks that not only fuel growth and retention, but do so in the dynamic startup environment that we all know and love. Let's get into it. Before we dive into this episode, I have some really exciting news. Startup People Summit is returning for 2026. This is an event where we bring together the sharpest minds from people professionals across the APAC region. If you want to stay in the know about programming and tickets, sign up to the waitlist by visiting startuppeoplesummit.com. There's a link in the show notes. Welcome to today's episode, where I'm speaking to Jesse Schofer, founder of Stacked and a leading voice in HR tech. We're going to dive into strategic HR tech deployment, including how to build a scalable HR tech stack that aligns with business outcomes and prepares for AI transformation. Let's get into it. Jesse, we're kicking things up. Welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this, Matt.
Me too. All right, let's dive right in. You've obviously got a really interesting background around not just HR, but the HR tech side of things. I think something that always comes to mind for me when I think about HR tech is like how few a number of tools we get in the HR team. Like I think sometimes because every employee uses it, we talk about like context switching and all that stuff. I'm really conscious of not having too many platforms to like make employees have to use. But in reality, when you kind of stack us up against like sales or ops or some of these other functions, we're pretty light on with some of the tools that we have. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is like, we really only get to deploy a little bit of budget compared to our peers. And something I'm really keen to start off with this conversation is like, where do we start with in terms of making sure that it's the right tool, the best tool? Like where do we kick off from?
So great question. And I think it's something that it does come up a lot in teams, is working out, where do you put the money? Especially in HR, like you said, we get less budget comparatively also to other teams. I think that's the first mistake, actually. I think we actually do need more budget. And I think with the changes coming around, the technology we have accessible now, and the fact that we want to have we're going to try to optimize the people we have, they're going to need better tools. And so the existing tools, I don't think are all going to be able to serve the needs of future business and the way we want to operate. So I do think that will slowly start to change, and potentially the cost structures and flexibility of how SaaS products actually come to the market and how we buy them, and the cost of those will also change. But if we think about if you've only got, I don't like this concept that, well, we don't want people to log into too many tools. I think that is BS, honestly. Look at your phone. How many apps do you have and how many things do you log into? And why do you log into all of those different apps and remember all those different passwords? Because they bring you value, because they give you something. They give you something that you want to do. They log in, they're good to use. You like it, right? So there's a value add to that effort of logging in. And then if you think about sales, marketing, whatever, they have all these tools and they use them for a purpose. They need them to get their job done, and they're done and they're useful, right? They bring a value. So when we talk about HR tech, we're like, well, people don't want to log into the performance tools. Like, why? Why don't they want to log in? Like, they log into thousands of other tools. They've got single sign-on, click of a button. That to me says that the tools we have are not serving the needs of the business and they're not bringing enough value. So that for me is the issue. The tech we have had traditionally stepped us up from admin paperwork, HR teams, to maybe more modern people teams. It gave us more tools, but I don't think it's the end point. I think the next step is where we need to go, which is more value adding tech infrastructure. If you go from how do you deal with less budget and choosing less tools, or how do you choose the right stack? I think first off is working out where can you actually really add value. And that doesn't mean just for the employees. It actually means for HR. How can you free up HR's time? How do you make sure all the admin is completely, almost 100% automated, out of the way? Because then you can actually have the human connection and do things. And that's where you will probably add more value than a tool, right? Because if you're putting all your tooling in employee-facing stuff and you've got all your people in admin-facing stuff, which is currently how it is, kind of doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you right, it's like pushing back on this kind of notion that actually having too many tools is an issue. And actually it's like, let's make sure they're the right tools and they're actually like people see the value in them and they actually want to log into them because they get something from it, or, you know, it solves some kind of need for them. That makes a lot of sense, especially when you use the app comparison. I know my phones are riddled with them. What's like the starting point then for companies to go, okay, well, we need a bit of tech, kind of where to from here? So you mentioned, you know, what's the actual problem it's solving first, where to from there?
Yeah. So I think this is probably, you kind of have to step back a little bit and think about HR as we do it now and how HR, in my opinion, should be done. I think what we do now is we go, oh, well, there's a fire, or we traditionally someone pushes in the business, we need to automate compensation cycles or whatever, for an instance, right? So you go look at a comp tool and you're like, oh my God. But actually, that's kind of like, there's a lot of push in HR. It's like, this is what we need you to do that. And then you end up like jumping on all these things and you don't really think about it strategically. That's how I've witnessed it in the past. I think what we need to move more towards, which I think is where we're trying to go in the function, is actually going, okay, again, like what do we actually need? What's going to drive the business? Setting the expectations and showing that roadmap. Because of course, with a product, customers are like, I need this, I need that, I need this. But of course, product teams go, okay, well, let's prioritize, let's set expectations. That's going to come in Q1 or H2 or next year, or there's the roadmap. And you setting expectations. So people are actually okay with a no, and you're not going to get that as long as they know that you've been heard and that they know when it's coming and why. So if you're not going to do comp tech right now, why are we not doing comp tech? What is more important for the business and why? And translating that so everyone understands. So I think that is the failure that we've had so far. We don't think strategically. We don't work with the C-level, that we, don't have a seat at the table all the time, but we also don't actively plan out and prioritize our work. We tend to stack it all on top of each other, rush it through, do it poorly, set poor expectations. So I always start with prioritization. What the hell are we actually working on? Why are we working on it? And let's communicate it. Because that in itself, if you don't skip that step, then you actually build respect, because people go, oh, the reason we're not doing that is because we've got this is why the business needs X right now. Great. I can wait for my comp tech and I can accept that that's not going to be perfect because we're going to get all these other important things first. So that's where the prioritization matters. And then you step into being able to justify budget more for that tech, for whatever it is that you need to support, because you've already got the buy-in from the leadership that that's the most important thing, that the business needs it. It's on the roadmap, it's communicated. And then you find the best solution. And that usually involves some form of tech. And then it's like an easier pathway, right? So you're already setting yourself up for success, so to speak. And I think that's where a lot of teams fall over. They're quite isolated. Your TA team's kind of doing their own thing. Of course, in bigger businesses, it's harder to align. But in general, setting yourself up for success in that regard and actually thinking about your infrastructure makes a lot of sense. Your infrastructure in context of that business, right? It'll always be different. There's core stuff, but there is a difference in what businesses need when. So yeah, that's kind of how I like to encourage people to think about where to start with technology, is that preparation, and then the other side is then your process design, which we can get into if you want to, but that's a big topic then.
Well, I have time for that. We'll see how we go. I hear what you're saying though about like, I think sometimes like we talk about this invisible work, or, I've heard the term department plus one be used. And I think we're definitely, I think that, businesses can take advantage of that by all means. I think they can throw things at a team, at a people team that maybe don't, it's unclear where else in the business it could go or something like that, or, whatever it might be. But I wonder, or I certainly feel, and in my experience has been that sometimes we let that happen to us as well, where we do poorly define like what we do and what we're here for, and like the service we're here to fundamentally deliver to the business. I often talk about this when like, I guess people who are like trying to, do a lot of the things you talked about, like get buy-in with the business. It's got to start from a place of like stepping out from this kind of like back office function that we've been traditionally, and saying, hey, here are the verticals or whatever the things that we're responsible for, and kind of, being clear about it. I'm a big fan. I think I've platformed it a bit here, is like product-led thinking, like having a roadmap, being clear about the things you're trying to accomplish as a team. I just think there's so much to be said for being able to share that sort of data with your business and actually give them a sense of like, what are you here for and what are you accomplishing? But I really like how you're talking about that as almost a lever towards stepping into like a HR tech solution, because, the best, I guess, defense or offense, depending on which way you look at it, against like being thrown something out of the business, being able to say, well, here, look at all the things that we're doing at the moment, and that's occupying 100 or 110% of our time. So like, what do you want me to stop doing? Or how are we going to like make that easier through HR tech? And like, what's the priority? What needs the human touch? Those sorts of things. Yeah. How did you?
No, I was just going to say on that, I think that's really great that you said, what do we stop doing? That's the question we don't.
Do we? Yeah,
no,
exactly.
We don't ask, what should we stop? Because a lot of people don't have that visibility of their roadmap either. So it's very hard to justify that. What do we add? What do we drop kind of situation if you don't have that groundwork done? Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And so you obviously, you've built a business around discoverability. So once a business is, or a HR team has decided, okay, yeah, we've got, buy-in from the business. They want us to get, I don't know, Comtech or whatever it is to try and help take either some load off our plate or create some kind of capability within the business and allow us to do something more efficiently. What, in your opinion, are like the best next steps towards going, how do we actually know what we need? We know, generally we need something that solves for this problem, but how do we start to get specific and actually start to find a solution for our problem?
I mean, it's the age-old question. It is very hard to do, I have to say, and get it right. To know exactly like the right tech. There's so many products and there's so many ways you can solve a problem as well. I think understanding what is your idea of success. So defining what does the successful rollout look like? What would it solve for the business? And what are the key things that this project has to do versus what would it be nice that it does? So it's like nice to have versus, mandatory things, right? That it has to achieve. I think a lot of people don't look at that vision and say, at the end of this is what success looks like. This is what our new day-to-day process will look like. This is how, if in an ideal world, this is what we want the outcome to be. Because once you know that, you have to also really think about the ideal process is that all of our data is moved across and whatever. Well, okay, step back from that. How do you get the data out of the current system? How do you get the data into the new system? Is there issues with those exports or imports? Is there ways to like upload data? Like that becomes like a requirement. So if you think through like steps, and I think a lot of people rush into tech. They're like, we need this and we're going to rush it out because there's pressure from the business and they fail to plan. And it's like, we already know the saying, like failing to plan is planning to fail. Like that whole upfront piece sets you up for so much more success. And it's, a proven change strategy that you plan up front and your projects, you have a whole planning phase for a reason, So for me, it's like really defining what does that look like and really what actually will move the needle for that business, because you can be in lots of businesses and they will need a HRES, but it'll need to do different things. It'll be like, well, there's 19 countries in this country, that we're serving, whereas versus we're only in Germany or only in Australia. Like it's going to be a different requirement for those two different HR systems, right? And you're going to have different products that serve those needs. So the planning and requirements mapping is extremely important, and take time, ask questions, start from where you want to go, step backwards and ask those questions on all the different things. What is the ideal outcome? Build it backwards. That's how I build out requirements mapping. And then from there, that helps you understand, okay, what are the base requirements of what I need? Not like finding a way to necessarily achieve that, because there's going to be, like I said, different solutions will solve a problem in different ways. So you don't want to define what the solution necessarily is. You want to define what the outcome, which is very different.
Okay. It's like beginning with the end in mind.
Exactly. And then like, that's why I built Stacked, a database to really like easily and quickly discover technology on the market, because there is noisy and there's a lot of products. And what I saw in the past was companies, I worked in companies and we'd be like, we need tech. And it's like, oh, the 3 biggest names that come to the top of your mind. And that's like your shortlist. Really, that's like how people would choose the shortlist. I'm like,
that's how I've bought stuff in the past as well. It's like, who do I already know, or do the people in my network know? That was kind of how I procured tech in the past. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing to do, to ask people. I think that's fine. Just like when you're hiring for someone, you also ask for, referrals and things like that. But the bigger your net, like when you're looking at, like, I kind of connect it to the same process of like recruiting someone. If you go out and get like a broad net of people that like, obviously you have a job description, your requirements, right? And people apply, they're coming to you because they've looked at it and they want to match. But like, you've got to kind of do that process yourself when you're looking for vendors. You go, here's my requirements and let me catch a net of relevant vendors that could suit those needs and then push them through a funnel of assessment, right? And the first one is that discovery of what is even on the market that could solve my problem and does maybe the bare minimum of the mandatory requirements. Like then I'm going to push forward with those shortlist. And that doesn't happen usually. Like I said, it's like a couple of 3 big names, that's it. Or you go in a forum and you ask the people, also not bad, but it's kind of like starting with a reference before you know if that tool even suits your business. Because you're going to be like, well, X tool worked for me, but X tool works for Germany and only up to like 500 people, and you're a multinational with 7,000.
Yeah,
Probably
it's
not
like it's like people who go, oh, well, Google does that. So, you know, those sorts of things, right?
Oh, you're like, please, like we love Google, but like, are you Google? No. So let's calm down. So I think that's where the whole selection process and that shortlisting, the shortlisting of the shortlist, it's like the long list to the short list is what you want to get to in that first step. And that's why that's basically what Stacked helps with. Like go to the database, you search, you try and find, you know, what the market even has to offer in terms of a research perspective. And I think that's important to just see what the market has. Then you can be like, oh, I'm a bit more informed. Then you can go to the next step. No one wants to jump in and see like 4,000 demos. Like no one's got time for that. So you do want to make sure that the demos you do are the products that you really feel like you've not missed anything and you've also got a match on certain mandatory criteria. And then the first call is always that, you know, working out whether the rest of the mandatory criteria as quickly as possible are met, right? Which is a whole nother podcast we can go into in how to do demos for vendors.
I hear what you're saying. I think I've definitely seen, and I've probably come up against that kind of sunk cost fallacy where it's like you keep looking at tools and you're so tired of looking at tools that you kind of just go, let's just pick something because, you know, we haven't found any of the good ones. And so we just, reluctantly choose like the best of the worst, something like that. I'm curious about your thoughts. Like so let me start by saying, I feel like we're in this like era for the past couple of years where we're seeing a lot of like consolidation of HR tech. We're seeing the big players buy a lot of small players. It seems to be like a bit of a trend for the past couple of years. I'm curious of what your thoughts are around when a company should look at something like one of those like bigger comprehensive players versus something that's like more of a point solution, that potentially is going to like solve for that problem more effectively, even though it may lack some of the integration of a bigger company.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, how long's a piece of string? It's like, it's always depends, right? It depends. It's hard to know. I think it's very contextual to the business. I think of course, there's really, there's like conglomerate, like enterprise, like massive multinationals. They're probably going to need a more robust system than some of the other, like more all-in-ones that are targeting maybe a smaller market, right? I think that's understood, but I don't know how long that will last. I think they're also buying up smaller players because they're realizing that they can't deliver on the needs, right? And that they have tech that is very difficult to adjust. And it worked for a long time. And now we're moving at the speed of lightning. So they're not able to move at that speed. I think that's what's driving. I think it's pretty clear that's what's driving, you know, acquisition. They're not able to serve the market fast enough. So they're buying the tech, right? I think that's okay. That's fine. Like the tech's great that they're buying. So that's obviously why they've bought it. And so your question was around whether or not, rather like why a point solution, or why an all-in-one.
Yeah. What are the things that a company might want to weigh up?
It's usually budget and this idea that we shouldn't log into one tool, that people choose an all-in-one. I don't believe that all-in-ones will serve all of the parts of HR well, because they just can't. Like you can't it's like you can't focus on 20 things and do them all well. You've got to do like a couple of things and do them great, or you're going to have 20 things and they're going to be great-ish. You're not sure which parts of that are the great parts, right? And I think that's what we see with all-in-ones. Like there's stuff that they really, really excel at, and then they add on things to make it easier for their clients to just adjust. But then you'll probably, and I think a lot of people end up doing that. And the challenge is I think there's a lot of contractual things around lock-ins, procurement, and I think that's going to change because the market moves so fast. And you can see it. People are like basically vibe coding tools because they're like, well, what my current all-in-one has doesn't do what I need. So, or even point solutions sometimes don't do what I need. So I'm going to vibe code my own thing because I want it to be more flexible, or I want lower cost, or whatever it might be, which I don't think is the way to go for a lot of things. But anyway, the market's clearly not serving a flexible enough procurement and purchase strategy and cycles for people, and how fast we move in business and how fast we need to adjust tech at the moment, because that's new. The speed at which we move is new. That being said, point solutions, I think I prefer personally to work with a really good core that maybe has some modules, like some of the all-in-one modules that are less critical. And then for the critical stuff, and that'll be depending on the business, taking point solutions that integrate really well. They have to integrate. Like if they're not integrating and they're not working together and the data's not flowing, like goodbye. Like that's not, data infrastructure in the future is number one. So yeah, again, that's my opinion. Again, it would be the difference of, it would also be the business context, but again, there's a place for all-in-one. It just depends on the guardrails you've been given.
I hear you. And I know coming out of like COVID and there's been a few triggers for like, cost consciousness and things like that to really be imposed on the business. But I've certainly been in a position a couple of times where, we've had to consolidate down, or we've had to like let go of a tool for the version that existed in our all-in-one or something like that. I think you're right. Like there's inevitably some like degradation of capability. And I think like one of the things people often miss is like when they let go of a tool that is a point solution and is really good at what it does, and they adopt maybe the module or something from their all-in-one or their best of breed or whatever it is, they don't realize like the work that actually comes back into the team from that, and like start to think about like what is the impact, and rather than see them gradually stretched and kind of taken, take it to the extreme there. So I'm obviously giving you a like inverse example, but where I'm trying to get to is like, how do you see teams, or I guess what's your advice to teams who are bringing on this tech to really think about like what the way this does change how they work, what their day-to-day looks like? Because I think that's often a misstep in certainly in procuring technologies. We go, gosh, this will really solve our problem, that they don't really go down to the level of like, well, what's it mean for you on a like day-to-day, week-to-week basis? Curious for your thoughts there.
Well, this is a big topic. I mean, it comes down, at the end of the day, tech is infrastructure, right? So it's part of your operating model within your team, within the company context as well, because you affect not only your own people or TA function, but you also affect, the broader company and how it operates. So it is a big thing. That's why I think people tech doesn't get enough time of day with executives and like strategy. And with that, thought process behind how we build people infrastructure. So I mean, it's always, I guess, I'm trying to think about how I word this right. Like, we don't have the right infrastructure. I don't feel like we have the right tools for HR right now that we need. And that's why we see the market like exploding with more and more stuff, because we're still not serving the needs properly. And at the same time, the teams are also struggling to articulate, what they need to some degree, and getting out of their current day-to-day process habits, right? Like you said, they don't really think about, if I bring in this tech, what does it mean for like our new day-to-day working styles or processes or sharing information, or how does that actually work? So I think coming back to, you need to kind of think about your design of your operating model. It sounds very scary, but it's not. It's like, how do we work? How do we want to work? And like kind of, I feel like people should clear the slate when they're looking at tech. Like at least for that particular part that they're looking at. And to be honest, even parts of the process map, like really clear the slate and be like, ideal world, this is what we'd like to do. And think about how things connect and how the person fits into that and how the humans actually interact within that process. As in like, where does information pass hands? Where are the handoff points? Where is it changing into other teams? Where is the cross functionality? Does this change, who has approval? Does it change? Does Jesse now not do contracts because they're automated? So what does Jesse do with her time? It means that whatever. There's so many things that happen when you start to build infrastructure for a people team. So it is complex. I don't know if it's even answering the question. But I think, going back to really understanding your how we work as a people team, and how infrastructure affects your process and your day-to-day tasks is important. And I think it's part of that planning piece that you do at the very beginning, but also part of your strategic piece before it even becomes a project. I think that's part of what a senior leader needs to do in a people team, is thinking about like, your job is actually, I'm there an operating model master? How do I design an operating model within people team in the context of the broader operating model and, org design? How do I design that we effectively deliver the business needs with the least amount of, cost resistance, with the best outcome of whatever? That's your goal. And then how do you flow through into the team? And people, I think, forget that whole piece. They're just like, again, very reactive, very like short-term thinking, not long-term, not looking on knock-on. Of course, there's lots of things that people team have to do, but you've got to think of it in the context of how we work and how do we serve the business. And you said earlier something that I liked, which was how we serve the business. So we're like a service function. And maybe this comes down to operating model a little bit more, but I like to think of it as people team should have a change or a transformation or a project function, like the bit that does the new stuff. The prioritized, that we need to do all these new things, prioritize them, that's your change. And on the other side, you have your run function, which is now it's in play. Now we've done this project, we've delivered the final project output. It goes into the run team to run it and maintain it and deliver it to the business as a service front end. So you've got a front end that is service, using the people products that get built, whatever that might be, whether it's a process or a tool or a combination. And then you have your, your change function that obviously, whatever you want to call it, the product whether they use product thinking to deliver that change or to come up with that change, it doesn't matter. You need people who are creating the stuff to then use with the business, right? And I think that what people forget is that can actually be the same person. You have different hats. So in a small business, I will be a run function as I do my day-to-day, and I will be a hat on change and project function as it's needed. And I think that cross-functionality of what the HR teams end up being or will end up being more and more is going to really change how we think about how we work, think about how we manage people, skills we need, all sorts of things. Sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but...
No, I mean, you're speaking my language. And for those that are only listening to the audio, I'm smiling because this is pretty much what you described as like pretty much the model that we had in my people. I've seen the last company that I worked in. So we literally... I came in and I was like, yeah, we've got like so much ops stuff that it's getting in the way of us being able to actually build the things that are going to give value add either back to ourselves as a team and speed up our processes, or it's going to give value back to the business as well. And that's literally what we did. I think we had a team of 6 or something. So, I mean, sizable team, split it in 2. Half of them ran as a product team. They had sprints, they had, deliverables, all those sorts of things. And the other half ran and they worked, quite cohesively because a lot of the running of the products and the tools and the services that we delivered gives you feedback that can then feed into the product side of things and like, what it is that you're building and how you're prioritizing different things. So I love that. And I love in particular that you talked about like, small teams or, people who are standalone in their role don't have to be missing out on this kind of thing either. Like, look, does it take a little bit more prioritization? Yeah, sure. But I mean, it's really, it can be done with either, I don't know, creating, siloing off part of your day or part of your week or something like that, by just creating the environment where you can actually sit down and focus on some of these builds, which I like. So I agree. I think for me, like that's a really modern, like, operating model I think all companies should embrace. When we talk about like companies that are changing their operating model as tech's coming in and they're like doing a great job of kind of doing what you said and thinking with it in your mind, those sorts of things, what are some like great examples that come to mind? Like, are there companies that you've seen that are doing this really well, or are examples you've seen where you're like, yeah, this is the benchmark. This is what I wish I saw in other companies, or maybe even the opposite. What are the misses? When the CEO asks you about retention by manager or where your pay gaps are widening and the answers sitting across 4 tools and a spreadsheet you haven't touched in weeks, me too. Let me tell you about Shapes. It's not an HRIS. It's a people operating system. Not just that, but it's an AI that sits across all of your people data and you just ask it in plain English. Whatever the exec team throws at you, it hands you a live answer backed by your own data. That's Shapes. And you can check it out, the link in the show notes. Let's get back to it.
As I'm not in-house anymore, I don't work in businesses at the moment. I think it's hard to know doing it right. I think we can see what's maybe more or less would have a probably more efficient setup when you have small companies that are like, the new modern, let's say Lovable, or the big headlines where they're like really small teams and they've still got to do HR, but they've got tiny teams or small teams, right? But they're earning, and their business is like churning crazy amounts of money, right? Like they're probably doing it be more right than the older businesses. Who knows, right? But you can kind of, I think about the ways you wouldn't do it is probably how 90% of businesses are doing it, right? Because it's just not working. We know it's just not working. So the bar's kind of low, and that's why we have this. And you know, I keep coming back to like, why don't we have respect? Like we always, and I'm going to kind of circle back. Can't believe I said circle back. I'm going to circle back to what we said earlier about noise in HR. And what I see is this like self-fulfilling like loop of not being able to be strategic, because to be strategic or to like make change in the business, they're like, well, I need data. It's like, okay, I need data. We don't have the infrastructure usually. Usually in that back end, we don't have a lot of data. It's poor infrastructure. We've got the data's wrong. We don't have any idea how many tickets or emails or questions we're getting. We don't know about what topics they are because we're not recording it. So we actually don't have the data to be like, this is what we know we need to work on, right? So it's very hard to get the data input to start the process because there's so much noise, because there's so little being done in the space to actually automate all the admin properly. And if you think about in a business where like, you know, people still do contracts manually. The handover from ATS to HRS is sometimes push data, but you still got to manually go through and do stuff. Sometimes the onboarding emails to get people's payroll data is like literally an email to someone, or a form in Google Forms that you've got to transfer somewhere to somewhere. You know, like all of this, someone has to do all this work, all this painful stuff that no one thinks about. No one cares in the business, but it has to be done. And HR are using all their energy on all this like noise, right? They're too busy, but we still don't have the right data to actually get the support we need to change that. So we're like in this thing where we can't deliver. We're too busy. Everyone's like, we're too busy. We've got fires everywhere. They're like, what fires? We're like, someone asked about payroll. We've got this. Like, there's 1,000,000 things that are like happening because I believe the tech infrastructure is not suitable in people ops, especially for what we actually need to do to get rid of admin. So we've added all these people in there to solve that problem instead of tech, because they're just not building for what we need. Then we don't have the data. Then we're too busy to actually roll out all the strategic programs for employees because we're too busy doing all the other like stuff. And then everyone's like, well, you're not delivering what we need. You can't even answer a ticket within a day. Like, you can't even get my payroll right. You can't even do this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, exactly. We can't, because there's all these problems, because we haven't set up the operating model right, you know? And so that it's such a problem when it comes to how we think about work and how we think about the value out of HR, that we don't deal with all of these kind of noisy things going on to get the data to be strategic, to then like actually change the way we operate, to move into these like more strategic team structures where we have the change coming through. Because even if we have that structure, let's say we transform ourselves and we're like, we've got the best setup in the world. We've got, we've got the structure of, we prioritize stuff, and then it comes into our change team or our product team or whatever. And we've got the build, they're doing new stuff. Then it gets into the people products. And then we've got the infrastructure team that maintain all the tech and orchestrate it. And then we've got a service function where, delivering the services. Great. That's great structure. All of that means if you don't have the data to effectively prioritize and justify to stakeholders what we're working on. Because what comes down that pathway of what we're working on and why defines whether or not the outcomes are actually what the business need. And because we don't have any data, and because we have so much admin, we cannot basically give them what they need and what we all need as a company to make the decisions, because we literally can't capture it properly. So we have this constantly poor cycle of round and round and round we go, round the thing. No matter how much we try, we still don't get that seat at the table. We still don't get the respect because we're missing core infrastructure. I believe in the people ops space is the most underserved space of people tech. The first thing companies do is like, we need a comp tool, we need a performance management, we need this. I'm like, we don't need any of that. We need to get your infrastructure right. We need to get the data about what people are in the business asking for.
Yeah, all the things that are feeding these tools actually need to be correct.
Get rid of the noise, capture all the data. That's what you need first. Everything else, add on later. And I think we skipped all of that somehow in the process of setting up HR, and we threw people at it and created manual Band-Aids, also because the tech wasn't available. But anyway, that's just my little rant there, because it bothers me, because we're trying so hard to be a function to serve people and to serve the business, and we all want that. And we're not really supported to do it, but we're also not supported with the tech options on the market. At least I feel they're coming. There's a lot of stuff coming. Historically, we didn't have that core done well, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I've definitely worked in larger companies that have tried to solve problems through manpower and kind of just like brute force it. And it ends up becoming this horrible thing. You're right. Like when your data's terrible, your credibility as a function is completely shot. Like, if your manager's coming back to you saying, this person doesn't report that person anymore and this is not their job title and their salary's changed and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, yeah, it just looks terrible. So I guess like sliding doors a moment, like when a company is at that kind of inflection point where you're like, actually, this is the point to get this thing right. And what's your advice to them to, actually get to buy in and be able to get them run on the board and start to build the foundation?
Okay, so how I've done it in the past, because it is a hard thing to do. It's hard to articulate, guys. We need to slow down to speed up, actually. And people don't like to hear that. They're like, no, I want my thing. And you're like, hang on a minute. Here's why we're going to not do it like that. And here's my suggestion. So I used to work, my background before HR was transformation, so change delivery. And there's a lot of things that I took from that into HR around how to get buy-in. One of those is like doing options papers. Sounds ridiculous, but basically putting forward options to make someone make the decision. Because if you bring forward like do nothing as an option and the consequence of that, and do something like what you would really love to do and like the cost, the consequence, and then something maybe like in between, give them 3 options. They're usually never going to choose do nothing. But if they do, at least show they've taken on the responsibility and accountability for making that decision, right? Whereas I think a lot of I always tell HR teams, you do not need to save the company. You do not. It is not your role to save the company from itself. If the leadership are saying no, they are responsible for the outcome of that no, not you. And so if you can get that documented, that helps. Firstly, because they assume you're basically saying you choose to do nothing about this topic and we're going to proceed anyway, despite what I've recommended. So I think that firstly can really help. But secondly, how to get the buy-in is to actually, what I did was go, look, guys, you like really candidly talk to the leadership and the executives, be like, you guys want data, right? You want this. These are all the problems we have. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. The reason I can't give you that is because these processes don't work. This data is wrong. The infrastructure isn't there. So I will never be able to deliver that. No matter what you ask me and no matter how much pressure you put, I cannot deliver that until I put energy and time into solving that first. So the infrastructure topic has to be solved first. Then I can give you what you need and then we can do everything else. If you would like multiple projects happening at once, let's say you want to push out, but we need. That's okay. You got to do resource planning. You got to be like, okay, here's the team. Here's how they use here's the amount of time that they're using on all these things, all the manual stuff, all the projects that we've got going on. There's only so much, time in the day. You've got to break it down for them. Use the data you have around people availability and what they're actually working on. Show them how it isn't possible. Show them that. Get them to stack rank. This is the whole strategic piece we talked about earlier. You need that roadmap. You need that prioritization. And you need as much data as you possibly can. So that's what I did. I literally just went in with I cannot give you what you want. I want to. And I just told them I can't do it. And I was like, if you would want that outcome, we work together. Here's how we work together. Here's my plan of how we could attack it. We can do like this or like this. Here's the impact, but here's the future benefit. And if you can come in and have that conversation, that is going to get you buy-in to be like, you know what, let's slow down and let's actually focus on infrastructure. Let's invest in that because we're going to save X amount of hours. Of course, you don't always know, but you can estimate. You can be like, I got 4 people here
use assumptions, right?
I've got 4 people here doing contracts manually. It doesn't really make much sense. We're going to need to hire someone else if we grow. It's just, you can do basic assumptions. And I think that's where we're lacking that. Firstly, that candid saying, we actually can't do that. I'm full on board with people teams being like, we can't deliver that. Not saying, yes, we can do it because you want to show that you can do something. It's like, no, be like, I can't do that. You've not enabled me as a business to do that because you're not giving me the permission to solve the problems or the budget or the time or whatever it is. And so the strategic leader needs to be quite strong, I think, in that space when you've got a lot of challenges, and needs to be willing to be very candid and be like, here's the challenges, but here's my way forward. Will you come on that journey with me? Let's partner. Let's get it done. Let me get you that data. Let me fix all your problems, but here's how I think we need to do it. So it is a fun discussion and most people don't want to have it. But if you can do that, a lot of the time the leaders are like, oh, thank God, we're finally going to fix all the problems. Do it. And they'll give you the budget and they'll
Yeah, but I feel like the alternative is to take on 1,000 things, do all of them badly, probably be overworked, feel like your credibility is shot, and that the business looks at you as someone who can't really deliver because you're trying to do too much at once. And yeah, I mean, it's which reality do you want, right? Like, is it the one where it's like a little bit of short-term pain to say, hey, it's actually just physically impossible? Like, which of these 10 things you want to do in what order? Once it's done, at least you've got that direction and you've got that guidance around like where to focus and potentially even some budget to invest in, being able to achieve 8 of those things instead of all 10.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, exactly, what reality do you want? Like, the reality we're in is that we're in the second reality that you said. We're in the, I can't deliver, I don't have respect, I can't get things done, I've got 4,000 things on my list, I'm burnt out. Like, HR is literally burnt out. And they are burnt out because there is poor infrastructure, more or less. Like, this stuff does not take away the noise we need to take away to enable us to do strategic work. And everyone knows that and everyone says it, but that's why, right? We can't keep hiding behind we're too busy or we don't get enough support. I'm like, we need to take it by the reins. This is the perfect moment in history where we go, we have the ability now with tech to absolutely change the way we deliver people functions and like design them, deliver the services, support employees, support the business. We can absolutely redesign that and reinvent it. I think we need to. And it will be fun. It will be messy. But if you can have those discussions, that's going to get you the buy-in, right? And I think every business will be like, please. And they will see you can start to see the benefits of all of that. Also the employees, like when I'm like as an employee in a business, I also don't want to go through like, you have to write an email to check about your payroll slip. Can you put a ticket in this system that wasn't built for HR and like go through a 3-week cycle to get a book approved from learning and development? And you're like, I don't want to do that. Like, it's a horrible experience for employees. So at the end of the day, I think everyone would be on board with actually HR transforming. It's just, it is going to take a lot of different skills than I think we actually have in the function right now. It's going to need a combination of different things in the future. Also, people don't want to talk about, but we need to help and support the people in those functions to upskill and learn the skills they don't have, but also, or if they have them, enable them to use them in people teams.
Maybe you touched on something earlier that I'm really keen to, and whether we close that on this or not, we'll see. But I wanted to talk about state of the union. You sort of mentioned HR haven't had tech that you think are sort of meeting their needs, but I know you also mentioned that it's moving in the right direction. So tell me a bit more about that. Like why you think tech is falling short at the moment, where it's going. Maybe what it needs to do to really meet HR expectations.
Yeah. Okay. Big topic, but I'll try and condense it as much as I can. Sorry, everyone listening. I'll do my best. No. So I think what we're missing is the flexibility, firstly, of tech, right? Right now, the tech is very like rigid. Most of them are quite rigid, and AI is enabling that to be a lot more fluid in the way that tools are built, and you can adjust as a user, but also as you build them, it's much faster. So I think the flexibility of just like having any kind of, every business is different. Every employee, is different. I think the personalization and the flexibility of what AI enables in tooling now is going to really, really change the way we deliver services. If I think about like customer service is basically exactly what HR does, but internally, right? There's a first level support. First level support's usually like a bot, right? An interface, a chat interface, like, hi, I have a problem, and it should be able to like solve 90% of the problems. And then it escalates to like second level support to a human when it needs to, right? And then that human answers your question. And then that human in customer service is probably like recording those answers and then feeding that back into their knowledge base so they don't get as many calls, right? That makes sense. If you're getting calls on whatever it is about your product, you're going to update your documentation so that can be answered and found. And when someone searches the chat, they get an answer, right? That's what we're doing in customer service. Are HR doing that? Absolutely not. Is there tech to support that? Absolutely not. Is there going to be tech that does that? Yes. And it's coming. So this space of like, being able to interact with your knowledge base and all of that, all of those outputs and invisible work that like it's lost in, Notion or wherever you have it in people teams, that's going to like start to be able to be surfaced. People are going to be able to search it. They already can do that. And then you need a way to like capture that data of like what people are asking. So all of that is now suddenly not just a ticket in a system that you have to export and integrate. And it's not just an email or a Slack. It's like actually captured and it's data you can use. Like this kind of future is where we're going, where that whole people ops, day-to-day stuff is going to become largely I believe, like a customer service function. It's that smart and it's that good that you basically don't need to. And to be honest, I don't want to wait 10 minutes to talk to someone or 10 days to talk to someone about my question or get an answer. I want an answer. So that's going to be, I think that's revolutionizing that. Also around like the whole onboarding process, the personalization, the data capturing, the way that that's done is can be very flexible. Also personalized, it knows who you are. It can talk, it can send you personalized communication. It can draft the communication, just the level up of like manually having to do those emails, those welcome emails, or having a standard email for everyone. There's just going to be so much more we can do in that space where we can do it faster and better because of the AI infrastructure that we're going to have in our tech. So I don't think we have that done well now, but there are tools available that are working on that and doing that. And then I think in the performance management space, it's going to level that up because that's just done badly. Let's just be honest. Like no one likes performance management. So I think performance management space is going to get a level up. There's lots of tools out there building in that space. Comp as well. Like comp used to be like this black box. Now it's like, okay, a lot happening in that, like, that space really well. Comp's going to be something, people analytics revolutionized. Before it used to be like quick, you need a team of like 10 people and you've got to ask for a dashboard and it's going to take you 10 days. Now it's like all the data's there. If you have the infrastructure, all the data's available, which is the goal, like make sure there's a central place for data. Then you can just query it, talk to it, ask for stuff. It'll like in the leadership, then don't have a middleman anymore. They don't have to be like, hey, can you tell me what's going on? It's like, I just log in as a leader and I see all the data. And I'm like, can you, mind blown. That's like what we want. So we are getting to that point very quickly. The tech is going to be available and is available actually. It's how fast we can change the way we work in business that's going to be the harder part. So I don't think anything about the tech transformation of HR is going to be anything to do with tech. It's going to be about the people change that is required. And the skill sets we have. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I'm really excited about what's coming in the space.
Yeah, I think I only keep seeing kind of new entrants, and it's there's a lot of like you said, there's so much. I'm sure like most people, it's hard to keep up like with the AI tooling that's coming out on a like consumer kind of level. So, in 10 years time when HR tech catches up, no, I'm kidding. But, I'm really looking forward to some of that capability being built and just native and everything. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see if that kind of, big company consolidation exercise, if that will prevail or what will happen there. Because I'd imagine there'll be a lot of companies that are kind of like stuck on this kind of like old school enterprise system that look outside and start to really go, gosh, we could have it so much better. So it's going to be an interesting future, that's for sure.
It is going to be a very interesting future. Very, very, very interesting future. I don't know how the transition is going to happen. I just don't know. Because I think people are still, I think that the challenge that AI tooling is going to have is the compliance and the trust issues. Like we've seen the lawsuits already. Like I think that's where, we also the vibe coding stuff. I'm like, guys, why are we vibe coding this? Like, I don't know about that, but I just feel like the standards around AI and the compliance around that is going to also slow things down a little bit. And I think that's rightly so. But there's a lot that AI can do that isn't going to, that can be done already, right? I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, let's see how the market goes. And the market is so big that like it is my full-time job more or less to understand the market, and I'm still discovering stuff. So, it is really like an exercise to really understand what's there. So no one's behind in this space. Everyone is behind as much.
Constantly evolving. Yes, we're all behind.
It's all out of date. Tomorrow it's out of date, so don't worry. Just be curious. I think that's the main thing, staying curious.
I think that's a great takeaway. Yeah, that's an excellent tip. I was going to say, is there any other things you want to leave people with from being someone that is across the entire industry? Is there any interesting insights you're seeing or any other tips you want to share for people that are feeling like they're being left behind? Anything like that?
I mean, the main thing is that, firstly, like I said, no one's behind. Everyone's behind. And I feel like there's a lot of, noise out there. But the main thing is that you individually take control of like your own destiny. Like you see what's there. There's enough free resources out there. There is so much out there.
Yeah, that's hard to
take the
keep up with
time.
as well.
It is hard to keep up with, but I think, take the time to reflect on what are your skills, where do you want to go, what do you think skills are that you don't have that other people have, where you're like, oh, that's worrying me. Like, try to identify them. Like, spend the time to reflect on yourself and your skill sets, and really be honest and be okay with not knowing something. Being like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what that is. I'm worried about these things. Then try and find. You can very easily then, find like these podcasts. Find podcasts, find communities, find online resources, webinars. Start dipping your toes in. Like, really take control and be curious, because at the end of the day, you're only no one else is responsible for your success in life and your progression at work, or learning, other than yourself. Like, no one cares about that. No matter how much anyone says, no one actually cares. That's a sad thing in life. No one really deeply cares as much as you will care.
Yeah.
So care about yourself. Take the time. Don't scroll socials, scroll ChatGPT asking for how do I keep myself relevant. I don't know. But I think there's a lot of things people can do, and I think that's the way to give yourself the pathway forward, is to know yourself and know where you want to go. That sounds a bit philosophical, but I think it's important for everyone to do that in this world.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great principle to end on. I completely agree. I think, much like I think is the same for employee development, is that nobody's responsible for your development but yourself. And so, yeah, I think it's a great parting wisdom to leave things there on. So, Jesse, where can people find you if they want to learn more or follow or any other sort of stuff?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can also reach out. I have a Slack community as well called Humans in the Loop, and about AI and tech transformation, and kind of just connecting with people who are interested in that topic. And I've also got webinars and a whole bunch of educational content that goes out. So please, if it's interesting, check it out. And otherwise, I have the stacked HR tech database I mentioned a few times. You can open source. You can just go there and search stacked.tech. And that's it, really. Hopefully it's helpful. Give me feedback. That's what I would like. And thanks for having me, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you on. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Foundation Series. Make sure to head over to our website to subscribe to the Foundation Series for monthly editions featuring future interviews on startup compensation. In each edition, we'll explore the different strategies, trends, and challenges faced by startups around the world. If you have a burning topic you'd like me to cover, or a standout guest that you want to hear from, drop me an email so I can dive deeper into the compensation topics that matter most to you. Join me next time as we continue to uncover the strategies and practices driving success in global tech startups around the world. Thanks for listening.